I don't know if you can hear us, but are we ready to start? Hola, everybody. We're not sure if we can actually start. Nobody told us if all the setup is ready.
I think you should hear our voices, right? So if you can hear our voice, thumbs up. That's very good. So then we're going to start. My name is Stephane, and with my dear colleague Fred, today we're going to talk to you about Flame. And I just saw Andy Milkist. Great. Thank you, Victor, for organizing this event. It's always fun to have, the Flame community get together. Ideally, we would have been there, Fred and myself, but sadly, after NAB, we are kind of quite busy after the trade show and the releases. But we'll talk to you about Flame today. We'll talk to you about the new release and also some of the the updates we released in the last months in case you have missed what we've done for the last 6 months, right? Well, let's start. Let's start with our last summer update, Flame 2024.1, because it contains technology that you should be aware of if you are not using this version. I guess you should, because the main feature of this update is our transition from OpenGL to Vulkan and Metal. So that means that the underlying technology for graphing frameworks have been updated, which means your Flame is faster than ever. And all you guys, while you need power, you need the technology to be able to go faster and deliver more for your customers, and you need this version. So it's improving playback, rendering, interaction when you play it with the application, and everybody wants to have a faster Flame. So if you're not in 2024.1 update, please update as soon as you can. Last fall, we released a second update for the 2024 release, which contained two of the most requested features on Flame Feedback. By the way, if you don't know Flame Feedback, this is where we exchange feature requests between you guys and the development team, so we can discuss about workflows, capabilities. And the first one was related to media export, because very often we need to deliver not only for TV theatrical release, but also for online. And MP4 was, in fact, a highly requested feature. And this is what we've done in update 2. So it's going to be super straightforward. So you just have to go in media export, select the various preset of MP4. MP4 in Flame can be encoded in either 8-bit or 10-bit. So that means you have either all the presets for social media, but you can also encode in 10-bit, which means that you get the same quality as what the camera record for ABC, Entra, NXABC, and all these formats. Depending on your pipeline, 10-bit might be better if you want to interchange between applications outside of a delivery workflow, right? So that's straightforward. You're going to be able to play with that and have fun. The second feature that goes hand in hand with MP4 encoding was subtitles, because as we know, we really often need to deliver content for international delivery. Most of you doing subtitle were using the text effects in timeline, and of course, that's not the best workflow for this. So we revisited how we do subtitling in Flame, and we created the subtitle effect. That you will be able to see in the timeline. So just by right-clicking, you are able to easily add a subtitle track, and from which you are able to import an SRT file, and that will create all the subtitles event in your sequence. And when you're ready, well, you can jump into the effect. You have all the formatting capabilities. You can even work with multiple languages and so on. So have a look at that. I'm sure it's going to be super straightforward and useful in your various deliverable workflows. Of course, like I said, it goes hand in hand with the MP4 encoding. That means that we also created presets, so you can export your content as QuickTime or MP4 or any format, and then you have the option. You can export the subtitles directly rendered in the video frames, or you can also export metadata. So you have different options based on your deliverable. So if you were to export content for YouTube, well, you would be able to export a clean media file plus a subtitle file, and then you would be able to stream that. Again, straightforward for you guys doing deliverables for social media. Last but not least, we released last week our .2.2 of 2024, which is a service pack release. So we got report of some issues in the field, and we brought in some capabilities at the same time. So one of the things that is part of this update is the support for the latest and greatest AGA driver. AGA released 17 to support the new Kona X card, which has been released some weeks ago. This update of Flame doesn't support this card yet. That's going to come in the near future, but we are preparing the ground. So you get the technology underneath, and when we are ready, we're going to let you know when that's going to be available. So AGA driver is installed on Linux with the DKU 18.2.2, and on macOS, you just have to download the driver from the AGA website. If you want to know more, just have a look at our system requirement page to get more information. We also qualified the NVIDIA A5000 RTX 5000 on the Lenovo P7. In the past, we were supporting the 6000 series of card, but of course, if you don't have a very high need for performance with the graphic card, and you're looking for lower cost offering, well, the 5000 card generation is a good fit for your Flame family finishing and VFX workflows. Of course, there's also bug fixing in this release, so have a look at the documentation. So this update is available in your account on manage.autodesk.com. That's for the 2024 releases updates that we've done. Very often we are asked about, especially if you are still in the context of the 2023 release stream, because very often large pipelines cannot update very often. And since we release multiple updates, it could be interesting to have a visibility, in fact, on what we release over time. So we have this website, which in fact is a timeline of the various capabilities we've added in the last years in our products. So if you want to know what we've added at a high level, you just go on that page and you'll see the various releases and all the capabilities we've added over the last 4 to 5 years. And as you'll see, there's a lot of things that we've added, touching, finishing, VFX, and deliverables. 2025 release has been sent to the world on April 11, just in time for NAB 2024. So we had the pleasure, Fred and myself, to attend the show, meet many of you who were at the show, and let's see what it contains. So one of the things you might have heard in March, in fact, we rebranded ShotGrid to Flow Production Tracking. Flow Production Tracking is part of the Flow ecosystem, which is our next generation platform pipeline for M&E at Autodesk. So go on our website, autodesk.com, and you're going to be able to know more about the current Flow Production Tracking and also Flow Capture, which was in the past branded as Moction. So you'll know more in the upcoming weeks about the roadmap of various technology we want to bring to Flow. As far as Flow Production Tracking, this is the same workflow as ShotGrid in Flame, so you won't be confused, except of course the name has been changed. Feature end of life, because yes, we're adding capabilities, but sometimes we need to remove things. And if you run Lustre, you have received in March a communication saying that Lustre is now end of development. It doesn't mean the product is dead. It means that we're going to start the development with the 2025 release, which will be the last version of Lustre. So that means starting with the upcoming update 1, you won't get a Lustre update. You won't get the capabilities in Flame to do interchange between Lustre and Flame. But rest assured that if Flame is in your pipeline and you stick with Flame 2025, you're going to be able to renew your subscription without any issues. But starting with update 1, you're not going to see any new version of Lustre or workflows with Flame starting with our next update. Also, we are informing you that in the next major release, we are removing VTR, IO, and archiving support. We feel that most pipelines have moved in the last 10 years to file-based workflow, and that should be the case, in fact, in your pipelines. I know some part of the world are still using VTR, and that's going to be available in the 2025 and updates, but at 2026 release, no more 1980s and 90s technologies in our products for this. I don't think many of you have played with the WarTap SDK on Windows. So many people doing pipeline work can use a WarTap SDK to extend the products, to automate the workflows. The Windows version, which has been removed from our delivery system, so we have only the macOS and Linux WarTap, which should be enough in your pipelines for creating tools around our products. Okay, let's start about configuration. The 2025 release, if you are already working with 2024 Flame family products, is going to be a straightforward update because we do support most of the same technologies as the previous releases. So for operating system on Linux, we support Rocky Linux 8.5 and 8.7. We're adding 9.3, which I'm going to talk in a moment. macOS 12, 13, 14. We remove support for macOS 11 because it's quite an old operating system, and we feel that most of Mac users are upgrading, in fact, to latest operating system and, of course, infrastructure. If you are running macOS or Apple Silicon M1, M2, M3 configuration, we strongly recommend you to move to macOS 13 because we've seen performance issues with macOS 12, which Apple has fixed with macOS 13. So, but I'm sure many Mac users already upgraded to macOS 14, so that should not be an issue anymore. For the Linux products, there's a DKU 19, which sets the minimum requirement for the graphic card to the P6000, which is quite an old card if you compare to the other generation of card. But still, you guys have made an investment in that configuration, so we still support that. But having a look at the RTX at that generation would be a very good idea to take advantage of the metal and not metal, but Vulkan work we've done with the update 1 of 2024. We updated to the latest NVIDIA driver, which is important for many of you who are using your Flame workstation to not only Flame, but also for 3D renders. So that's important very often to have, in fact, this updated driver for other technologies. And if you still have the HP Z840 workstation, this is no more a qualified configuration. And that means that we're not testing this configuration. Flame will install. If you have this configuration with a P6000, you're going to be able to use that, but we're not testing this configuration because it's a quite old configuration. But very often what happens when we decommission these hardware, we've seen sites, in fact, using that for Flame Assist or Flare as, you know, an assist station for Flame when you upgrade your workstation. So as I said, it's easy and fun to move from 2024 to 2025 because the technology is quite similar. But we've added support for Rocky Linux 9.3, next generation of operating system on Linux. So as usual, when you move from version 8 to version 9 of operating system, it's a full installation. So that means you're going to have to back up your content and then recreate your workstation. All qualified workstations are supported under Rocky Linux, so that means there's no issue. And of course, not only Flame, but also Maya and Flow Production Tracking are supported on this operating system. If you need to run previous generation of Flame version, like the 2024, you might want to stick with Rocky Linux 8.5 or 8.7 because we have not qualified the Flame Family 24 releases on Rocky 9.3. We started fresh with 25, and then we're going to move on for the future releases. But I know many pipelines sometimes want to have access to multiple versions, and that would be a case of a Rocky 8.3. The two motivation factor to upgrade to the latest and greatest Rocky Linux version was, in fact, support new workstation, which we're going to see in a moment, and also support workflows where sometimes you need to install other application like a Nuke. Nuke version 15, sorry. Nuke 15 is only supported in Rocky 9, not 8. So the Foundry skip version 8, and that's a good motivation to move to Rocky Linux 9 if you need to run Nuke and Flame on your workstation. Yeah, when you're going to install Rocky 9, you'll see it's a nice operating system, nice graphic user interface. You get a tour, and you are able to configure your workstation without having to go to a shell. I mean, I see Rocky Linux as a good mix of the best of macOS and the best of Windows within an environment where you have full control on the operating system and hardware. So, I mean, this is straightforward. You go in the various settings, and then you create your monitor, display, whatever tablet configuration, and so on. So that's an easy and fun operating system. If you have explored the Flame on the cloud, which has been released 2 years ago, so we provide what we call a base AMI. AMI stands for Amazon Machine Image, which is in fact the underlying technology to be able to deploy, which contains the operating system, the drivers for the various security, and of course the grid driver. So that is a package you can get from our system requirement page, and from there you just have to deploy it on the cloud, install Flame on it, and there you go. You are able to do magic with the cloud technology. you will hear from AWS that they have released a new type of graphic instance, the G6 instance, which are not supported with our configuration because the grid driver required for this configuration require a more recent driver. This is something we will qualify and let you know when that's going to be available. So right now, if you want to deploy Flame on AWS, you need to use the G4 or the G5 instances, as you will see in our documentation on the Flame webpage. Configuration, like I said, so we moved to 9.3, Rocky 9.3, so we could support a new stream of workstations. So we closely work with HP with their Z6 G5, which is a AMD Threadripper Pro, and we qualified the RTX 5000, 6000. You can configure your system as a single or dual graphic card. Or dual graphic card would be used in the context of background reactor, so for background rendering. We have also similar configuration on the Dell side with the 7875, and also on Lenovo with the P8, which is a quite sexy workstation. As you can see, it's a nice looking workstation. So if you want to shine in your suite, well, you have a great workstation. So they are all similar capabilities. So depending on your relationship with Dell, HP, or Lenovo, well, you will have access to these technologies on which you can install Flame family products and do magics. Many Flame artists need to go on set, and in the past we were asked, what about laptops? And of course, most laptop usage on set is on MacBook Pro, but as you might have seen, the laptop technology is kind of going quite fast, and we are seeing more and more. I said laptop, but in fact, these are really mobile workstation, and the ZBook Fury G10 is a very nice offering from HP. So we had a look with them to see, what it means to run Flame on that. So we are right now looking at qualifying this configuration, which is quite appealing if you want to use Linux on set. So there's a microsite on HP.com talking about this one. It contains a lot of technology that is useful for you. So up to 128 gig of RAM, NVIDIA graphics, up to 16 terabyte of NVMe storage. So that's in a portable environment. This is quite impressive. There's an HP Dreamcolor display, which means 10-bit with great quality of display. And HP is targeting this mobile workstation as an 8K environment. And I was in doubt, in fact, when I started looking at the laptop, but in our test, we were able to play real-time R3D full resolution file in 8K, which is quite impressive for a mobile workstation. So again, if you have a need to be on set with the Linux mobile workstation, that could be a good offering. And we'll let you know when the configuration will be qualified on our system requirement page. If you're on macOS, and as we know, macOS is a great secure operating system, but sometimes it creates some challenges. And I'm sure everybody in the room who had installed Flame on macOS might have had some issue browsing your storage, and that's because macOS wants a user permission so the application can browse or access resource on the workstation. So that's a pain. I guess this is always, a problem. So with Flame 2025, we've added a dialog that lets you know which services need to be enabled. So we cannot change that because it needs your credential. So, but when you're going to install Flame for the first time, Flame 2025 for the first time on your Mac, you're going to see a dialog like this one, who will tell you, well, you need to unlock some capabilities or grant access to Flame. So you're going to be able to, we're going to pop you the window. You're going to be able to enter your credential. You're going to be able to unlock and then restart Flame. And then there you go. You're going to be in business. Next topic is centralized configuration. So I will let Fred, in fact, introduce this capability, which enables great workflows in facility where you have multiple Flame systems.
Yeah, so the goal here is that we wanted people to be able to centralize all their setups and also eventually configuration files using a more defined way than just doing symbolic links, for example. So this is not something that you couldn't do with symbolic links, but the idea is that with the new sysconfig file.cfg that we've added, you have all in one place where you are reading the presets from. So in the case of 2025, what we did is to make sure that within the software, you actually have all the areas where you can save presets. So you can think about the animation filters, but also the timeline search and the match criteria, for example, that can actually be saved at the user level, but also at the shared level. And the file is used to read the shared presets from a central location. So that makes it very easy for you who are working in facilities where there are more than one flame to actually share the presets amongst all the different workstations. And inside the application, when you go to load the preset, then you are offered with the option to load your own user presets or the shared ones. And this is true, for example, one big thing is for the media export presets. So if you want all your facility to work with the same media export preset, you can centralize that. And then in the dropdown to select them, you're gonna have your preset there for everybody. This slide is to show you the file actually. So you can see that you can not only share the whole shared folder, but you can specify very specific. So you could say use the shared preset on a machine for most things, but centralize the custom action scripts, for example, or as I said, the media export preset, and everything that was related to the node bins and also the import geometry, as well as matchbox and pipebox, has been moved to that file as well. I think we can skip that one, Stephane. Because it's the different tokens that you can use. But if you refer to the online help, you're gonna have the documentation with all those tokens that you can use in the file. One of the go ahead, Stephane.
Just before you go through, so I don't know if you have been exposed to something we released 2 years ago, which is the project server. And the project server allows you to decouple all the metadata of your projects to another server, meaning that when you start Flame, instead of having all your data on your system drive, you have the metadata of the project on a remote server. So that means if you have multiple users, we can all connect to the remote server and then create our project. The data is saved there. The media is saved on your storage. And that means by removing this data from the workstation and adding the centralized configuration, we are making more and more Flame as being delocalizing of data, meaning that the moment you need to upgrade either the Flame version or you need to upgrade the workstation, you need to upgrade the operating system, like I showed you with Rocky 9.3, well, it's easier than ever because all the important data is outside of the workstation. And that means you can decommission the workstation, add a new workstation, connect to the project server, and there you go. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for the future, is to provide you better ways to deploy our products in a facility or even in the cloud, right? So that's the kind of technology we are looking at. Go ahead, Fred, with the project and user management.
Yeah, so one of the big change that we've done that goes a little bit hand in hand with, but I can talk about it right there, but is the removal of the concept of the Flame user profile. So when you're gonna launch Flame 2025 for the first time, you're gonna see in the startup screen at the project management window, there's no longer a user section, okay, that is there. So this is the new window. And the reason is that now everything that used to be in your associated to your user profile. So we're talking about your preferences, your presets, and your keyboard shortcuts mainly are now actually tied to your OS login. Okay, so everything is still there. It's just that now it's no longer associated to a version profile that you are creating. The advantage there is that if, again, you work in a facility with multiple flame and you do not have your own workstation, but you can move from one workstation to another, then if you centralize your login on the network, every time you're gonna log onto a workstation, all your preset shortcuts and preferences will be automatically loaded and there for you. We also added a mean to export those. So if you are a freelancer that go from one facility to another, then you can export your user settings and go to a new place and just import them back. So that way you can quickly get back all your preferred shortcuts and preferences. And the one thing, actually the bigger objective that we wanted to achieve with this is that the user settings are now version agnostic, meaning that as of 2025, because that won't apply to all like 2024 and 2023 version, you will no longer have to create separate preferences and shortcuts for every version of Flame. So right now, every time you will launch a new version, you will have to create a new user profile. Now it's going to be version agnostic, meaning that you could very well start Flame 2026 in the future. There's some new stuff in there, some new shortcuts. They are available, but if you go back to a place that runs Flame 2025 and use your user, everything's going to work. You won't need to actually carry a user profile for every version of the software. The one thing that I can quickly mention is that before there were some differences based on the type of profile that you would select. So if you would select a Flame profile, a Smoke Classic profile, you would get a different part of the software initialized differently. So we have all standardized that. So now obviously everything starts the same, but we moved the selection. So that selection between Flame, Smoke Classic, Smoke FCP, and Luster to the shortcut editor, where now you can, within the software, actually switch between the two. So if you have, for example, a colleague that is using the Smoke Classic shortcuts and you are using the Flame one, but he just quickly want to come in and show you something, you can go in the shortcut editor, switch to the Smoke Classic shortcut. The user can show you what he wanted, and then you can switch back to the Flame shortcut.
And this is cool because we know we have often artists who started in Flame, then they moved to Smoke. So then the editorial part, they were using the Smoke Classic keys, and for the VFX, they were using the Flame hotkeys. Well, that means you can easily switch within your environment without having to create a user like we used to do in the past, which is kind of cool. I mean, have a play with that. And as you can see, all that is really to make sure that you can really easily move between facilities if you're a freelancer, or you can really start with your customized keyboard shortcuts without having to redo them every release, which is always a challenge. Preferences update.
Yeah, so one of the goals, a kind of a side thing associated to this, is that in the preferences, we wanted to better identify which preferences are saved at your user settings level, at the project level, at the app version level, or at the system level. So we added that level to the left of the panel there, so you can have a better idea of where they are actually saved. And we did the kind of a reshuffle a little bit, so a cleanup if you want. So it gave us the possibility to have a little bit more tabs per categories. So we split them up a little bit and also put things in what we think is a better categorization. So it's going to be maybe a little bit harder for you to start with because there's going to be some things that you may be looking for. But in the end, we think that in the long run, it's going to help you better identify where are the preferences.
I really recommend, in fact, when you're going to deploy 2025 in your studio, to really spend a good 15 minutes just to look at all the tabs, because as we know, Flame is all about muscle memory. So you want to see, and of course, we made a big cleanup. We tried to keep things relative to the same location, but have a look to make sure you remember with the new infrastructure and organization where things are at, because you don't want to have to search that with the customer in the back while you are working. So take a 15 minutes. I don't think you need more than that because it's quite straightforward anyways.
Maybe the one area that, and you're actually right on it, the one area that might surprise a user is the broadcast monitoring preferences that used to be in a single tab and that now we have split in two. So in project broadcast monitor, you have everything that is really related to the sync and the hardware itself. So like, is it a SDI monitoring? Is it so? But everything that is, do I prefer the image to be scaled? Do I prefer to have the broadcast toolbar on? Is actually in user players and monitoring. So everything that we thought was really more a user preference is in user players monitoring. Everything that is more about the setup and the project itself is in project broadcast monitor.
Thank you, Fred. Let's talk about, we're talking about monitoring, so let's talk about the various technologies. So, of course, 2025 share the same AGA that I talked to you for update 2.2, so that's straightforward. We also updated the Blackmagic desktop video driver on both Linux and macOS. As you know, if you use Blackmagic design hardware in our product, this is something that is not installed with the DKU. You have to download it from Blackmagic website, you install it on Mac or Linux, and then you are able to use Flame / Resolve or other application using that on your Mac OS or Linux workstation. If you are to move to Rocky 9.3, desktop video 12.8.1 hasn't been yet qualified by Blackmagic on this operating system, which is not which will happen soon, but has not been done. But we closely work with them to ensure that everything is working fine. So that means if you want to move to 9.3 and you have Blackmagic design preview hardware, well, there's no issue about that. So rest assured, everything is working as expected, but then BMD will qualify that very soon. One of the biggest feature, in fact, for preview in this release is the support for NDI SDK 6, which adds 10-bit support. So I don't know if so many of you have explored NDI, which is IP video. It allows you to be able to send a broadcast out over the local network in your facility or even through the public internet. But in the past, it was limited to 8-bit. And as we know in Flame, we really want to see high quality image to our remote customers and collaborators. So we closely work with the NDI to explain them the reasoning behind the need for 10 bits, and they were able to release something just before NAB and in time for our 2025 release, which is great. So that means Flame is now a good citizen in an NDI ecosystem that is part of a camera, display, switcher, and all that thing. Intel-bin technology. If you do some research about NDI 6, you will see that NDI has also added HDR capabilities. This is not something we have right now because they are kind of two tiers of SDK for NDI. So there's the standard one and the advanced one, and HDR is in the advanced one. And this is something we're going to investigate for the future. But right now, being able to broadcast 10-bit as good as SDI with NDI is a great capability for your remote workflows. Color management. I was walking the floor at NAB and I've seen many people talking about mobile cinematography. And this is something that will come, in fact, to your finishing suite very soon if it hasn't started yet. As you remember, Apple released last fall the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max, which enables ProRes recording. It enables recording on a USB-C drive. So that means we can create content on a drive on set. And then they added Apple Log, which unlock, in fact, the capabilities of the phone to create great image. And that ProRes plus Apple Log, create great content that I'm sure you're going to get in your finishing. So in 2025 release, we've added support for the Apple Log color space. That means that you're going to be able to automatically browse the content within Media Hub, because we support the QuickTime files from the native camera from Apple and also the Blackmagic camera application in ProRes or H.264. So automatic tagging is available. And also when you export files as QuickTime or OpenEXR, you're going to be able to get this thing. So you're going to be able to move Apple Log to the various color spaces like ACES, do your VFX finishing, and deliver your product with fun. So we also work closely with Sony to support the Burano camera, which has been announced at IBC last fall and released at the beginning of April. So this camera records in 8.6K, so that means more and more very high resolution to your suite. That's why it's important to work with a latest, newest workstation, because I said earlier, the P6000 is great, but still, if you were to work with 8K, you might, suffer a bit. And as we know, we're going to get more and more 8K in our products for finishing in VFX. This camera records in XOCN LT, which is the RAW format from Sony. If you follow what we've done in the past with the Venice and Venice 2, we supported, in fact, XOCN or the multiple flavor, including LT in the previous releases. But if you want to work with Burano specific file, you really need to work with 2025 release, because they made some modification to the MXF files, and these files would not be compatible with Flame 2024 or 2023. So you really need, in case of a media format, to keep up with the releases we provide, because camera vendors very quickly update their technology. So that's part of 2025. Same thing on the red side. They came up with the VRector X camera, which is a global shutter, which is great because nobody likes jello effects when we do VFX and finishing. So, and they release an SDK for that. And that also is available in Flame 2025. So more 8K content in our product. Woohoo! More creative tools. And Fred will introduce us to new things that we've done with 2025.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen here. So you should be seeing Flame right now. If I look at Zoom, it looks like you do. Just let me know if there's an issue. So we're gonna go through to start with 3 new nodes that we've introduced. There's match grain to apply back a grain to your clip. And there's also a lens distortion, which is an updated lens distortion tool. So we're no longer using the previous lens distort node. And also a estimate node. And what we wanted to do, so Stephane talked to you about the work that we did with Vulkan and Metal. So that work took a lot of our resources, and we couldn't deliver as much tools as we wanted in the 2023 and 2024 cycle. So we wanted to get to come back developing some tools, and a lot of users told us that what they wanted was more day-to-day technical tools, because they didn't want to have to go out of Flame and use a different software to actually just remove the lens distortion or apply back the grain to a clip. So this is what we've delivered. So in that case here, I have my original clip, okay, with this signage on the wall, and also you can see there are some buttons here on the shirt. And if I zoom quite a lot, you should actually some grain in there, okay? And what the match grain node requires to extract the grain from that shot is the original plate and a denoise plate. So the denoise plate must be very good. So the better the denoise plate is, the better the extraction will be. Here I'm using the denoise node. It can be whatever node that you want to use for denoise. It could be a Matchbox node, it could be Need Video as an OpenFX, but the idea is that you get that denoise plate here. And what I did in my action here in my paint is that I have actually removed the buttons there and removed the signage on the wall as well, okay? When you go to match grain, the process should be basically a one-click process in a lot of cases. So what you want is to connect your composition with the denoise version and the original plate. The matte input is optional, but those three, if you want to analyze and extract the grain, are mandatory. And then all you have to do is press the analyze. So the analysis is done in GPU, so it's really fast. If the luminosity of your clip doesn't change that much throughout the clip, analyzing a single frame could be good enough. If the luminosity changes, then you want to analyze more frame. So I'm gonna click analyze here. You see that my grain has been extracted. And if we look, I'm gonna switch maybe, or just move that a little bit. So if we look here, I have my shot without the buttons, but with some grain applied. And if we do a before and after, you can see that the grain is basically the same between my, oh, sorry. I'm just gonna switch back here between my original plate and my composition. Once I've done that, I have some tools to actually modify the grain. So I have a way to scale the grain per channel on X, on Y, or also to blur the grain, the grain, or to apply a gain to it. But the most interesting one is the dispersion, okay? Because if we are using our view that we call the boosted grain view, you're gonna actually see that I'm gonna have some ghosting in this area that might not be really visible when we look at the result. But you can see that I have some ghosting there because when I extracted my grain on the black letters, obviously there was not as much as information as elsewhere. So to fix that, we're gonna disperse the grain from an area to this area where we want to fix the issue. And this is why here, if you look at the left on my schematic, that I have created a matte. So I'm gonna start by activating the dispersion and disabling the matte to show you what is happening. So I have this box here, and everything that is within the box is actually dispersed to the entire clip, okay? And I have some controls over the cell size, the distortion, the blending. I can also change the size of the box itself if I want to, okay? But the idea is to isolate it only to this part. So this is why I'm using my matte. So if I enable my external matte, then you can see that I can select an area that fits the pattern that I want to propagate and then fix the ghosting issue like that. So in the end, what I have is really a clip that's gonna be my composition, but with the grain from the original plate. We're gonna switch to lens distortion. Again, mostly a one-click operation. Okay, so I have a shot here, and what I wanted to do is just to clean up the concrete at the forefront there. The biggest difference with the lens distortion in comparison to the legacy lens distort node is that now there's a lens grid input, okay? And if you have a lens grid provided with your shot, removing the distortion should be a one-click operation. If you do not have a lens grid, you can still use the tool. It's just that, like in the legacy node, you will have to create the splines yourself. So if we look here at the lens distortion, and I actually look at my lens grid, you're gonna see if I enable show line, that the software is able to detect the lines and use that information to actually do the calculation. But if you do not have this, then you're gonna have to find within this image all the lines that should be straight and create splines. We've changed the spline system, so it's basically the same as in the JMass Tracer. So that should be familiar to you. So if I have my image and my lens grid, all I'm gonna have to do is press the calculate button. And you see that right away, I actually have my shot that is undistorted. The calculation is based on the 3D equalizer lens distortion kit. So it's the same maths as in 3D equalizer. So this is why you can actually import the distortion from 3D equalizer. So if you are using 3D equalizer, you can go to their site, download a small script that we've written that will add inside 3D equalizer an option to export to flame the lens distortion, and you can import it back. So once my image is undistorted, as I said, I did in Paint my cleanup, okay? And what I want to do is put back the distortion. So there's two workflows to do that. The first one is with the lens distortion node itself. The node is aware, so let me just backtrack a little bit. When I did my distortion, so this clip is 920 by 1080. When I did the undistort, obviously to keep all the pixels, we actually scaled the image automatically, so all the pixels are preserved, okay? But the nodes still keep in memory that the original resolution was HD. So when I duplicate the node, this duplicated node still knows that the original resolution is 920 by 1080. So if I connect it to my composition there and switch the mode from undistort to distort, you're gonna see that it put it back automatically to the proper resolution. So if we look at before and after, I basically have the same, but with my composition applied. Obviously, you're gonna see some more controls in there. So everything that is in the middle are the controls based on the model that we are using. So we have models for fisheye, but also for anamorphic. And you can further tweak the controls after. And you have also a repeat mode. So if you do not want like to have black, you can actually repeat the last pixel, or you can also switch the filtering used for the pixel movement. If you look at the lens distortion node itself, you're gonna see that it has 4 outputs. So the result and the matte. The matte input and output are not for composition, but to apply the same distortion to a matte clip associated to your front. The two outputs in the middle are the STMap output and the inverse STMap output. So if we look at them with F4 here cycling, so that's the STMap output, and that's the inverse STMap output, okay? And the usefulness of this is that if you want to apply the same distortion calculation to other clips that were actually shot with the same lens, you do not have to go through the lens distortion and lens grid routine again. You can only add a STMap node, okay, and say I want to apply this distortion. So I'm going to use the STMap here, and you're going to see that I will get the exact same result as my lens distortion node. But you can also use the STMap node to put back the distortion. So if I connect it to my paint and use the inverse STMap, sorry, I'm just going to do, oh, sorry, let me do it again. So if I use the inverse STMap rather than the duplicated lens distortion, then you see that I have the exact same result as this, but with using the STMap outputs. If we look at the STMap node itself, so if you work with artists that are using Nuke in your facility, you probably know that in Nuke you can have STMaps with data and display windows. So the STMap node itself will actually deal with those. So in that case here, I only took my grid and applied a undistort, which was a display window, but my redistort here has a data window information. So if we look at the clip in extended in metadata, okay, you can see that in the clip information, there is some data window information there. So if I want to use that in the STMap, I'm going to actually set the framing to use data and display window. And by default, we're going to propagate the information from the clip directly to the STMap node through the from STMap. You could also set custom values and you're gonna apply back. So if I do a before and after, you see that it's basically the same. Some quick notes about some improvements that were made to some tools. I don't know if you've seen it, but as part of the Logic Live that ND is running, we did a reverse user group where people were actually putting requests in, and we've implemented a few of them, and as well as some flame feedback. So just quickly, we're gonna go over in clamp. There used to be only a drop down with clamp and negative clamp. It has been replaced with a maximum clamp and a minimum clamp. So you can now define the value instead of always being 0 and 1. You can actually define the values at which you are clamping. In the color warper, we added shortcuts to toggle between matte, selective, and result. So you can use 2, 3, and 4 to actually toggle between them. And also we added a way to set up the blur of your selective. So if I do this proportionally, okay, so instead of relying only on the Alt-Shift keyboard shortcut, you can now use the button. For all the different keyers, you now have two outputs. So the matte, just like before, but also the inverse matte. So in every keyer, you can actually have the key itself and its inverse. And in image, reworked a little bit the UI of the semantic keyer, so it's a little bit more clear. And also we've added a way to actually move the isolation widget with the numeric fields. Finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about is improvements to the timeline. There's a bunch coming from both sides there. So both the reverse user group, but also flame feedback. So small quality of life improvements, as well as bigger things that have been requested for quite some time now. So we're gonna start in the media hub. So something very small, but personally that I was always falling into that trap. You would go there and say, I want to open those sequences, but open was not there. So now it is, and it automatically switches you back to the timeline. Same thing for the batch tab. Double clicking on the source clip before would open the player with the source tab, but would not switch to the source tab in a timeline. So now it does actually both. But speaking of the source tab in a timeline, we had some people who do not want the source tab to be there. So we made it possible to actually close it now. So there's the little X button that will appear, and you can close the source tab if you want to hide it momentarily. In that case, in the context menu here, you're gonna have the show source timeline that's gonna appear, or you could still double click on it. And in your preferences, if you go to user timeline, you're gonna see a new source timeline preference that allows you to never show it, to have it exclusive to sequences, which mimics what was in smoke before. So you have either the source timeline or the sequences shown at once. Can be closed, which is the default that I just showed you. So basically I can use the X, or to always show it, which was what you had in Flame 2024. So it would always be visible. The order, let me switch to the reels. The order of the tabs now is driven by the order in the media panel. So if I wanted to say I want to have my French in between my English and my Spanish clip, then you see that in my reels, it has been updated to follow the order, but in my tabs at the bottom as well. I cannot reorder the tabs themselves, but I can reorder the clips here, or even from my reels, and it's gonna update everywhere. The exception is if you apply a localized sort. So if we say localized sort by name, so now I'm gonna have E, F, J, and S. I'm gonna have the same here at the bottom because I have a preferences for open sequences that says use localized sort order. So if you only want to localize to sort your clips in the media panel, then you would disable that. But note that the localized sort order has never had an effect on the reels, and it's still the case. So in the reels, you are still seeing the custom order, because otherwise it would prevent many operations to be done inside the reels. Smaller issue. So in the freeform view before, if you would extract a clip from the timeline and actually drag it over a clip in the freeform, you couldn't drop it on top of an existing clip. So if you had a lot of clips, that would be an issue. We've added keyboard shortcuts to go to the bottommost track. So in the Flame shortcut, it's going to be shift down. Shift up was already possible, so we've added shift down. And in the Smoke Classic, it's Control Alt up and Control Alt down. We've also added a new, so if I select, for example, only English and French here, and I have a connected segment, and I see duplicate connected segment, there's a new option here for selected sequences. So if I apply it, you're going to see that I have my duplicate here on my English and French, but my Japanese and my Spanish do not have them because the modification were only on the selected sequences. And small quality of life improvements to the tabs themselves. So now the Alt click to open the information window is available on the tabs themselves. So you do not have to actually find the clip here or up to find what you are looking for. And in the context menu for the tabs, we have added the export current sequence entry with a shortcut. So before, export would be Command E to export the selected sequences. But if you wanted to make sure to only export what you were seeing here, now Shift Command E will do the trick.
Thank you, Fred.
This is it.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. This is, as you can see, 2025 is a good mix of technology, small, medium, large things. Hopefully, it will fit in your workflow. So, well, get back to us with feedback, saying what is good with 2025. Hopefully, it's going to make your time experience better, faster. Then you're going to be able to produce, more magic and spend more time on creativity than having to set the keyboard shortcuts or whatever. So, enjoy the rest of the user group and see you soon. Take care.